Similarly, if we continue to have a country where we restrict people in terms of opportunities, we will have trouble. Now, we've come a long, long way, don't get me wrong, but there are still too many Barbadians who are left out of opportunities because they don't know somebody, because they don't have enough collateral. And it is particularly acute among young people who are trying to start off life and to make a living for themselves. And I say to you that we have to build a country in which we root our people. First, culturally, mindset, psychologically, they must know who they are and they must like who they are. But secondly, we must build equally a people who are tolerant, who are empathetic and considerate. And then once we deal with that, we must build a country in which our people are financially rooted as well. And financial rootedness does not mean money in a pocket, because that comes and that goes. Financial rootedness, wealth comes not from cash in pocket. Wealth comes from the ability to transfer what you own from one generation to the next generation. And while many of our people are substantively better than they were 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, there is still some way to go to allow ordinary Barbadians to be the owners of much of what we own and produce in this country. The consolidation of ownership has to be widened, has to be opened up. The opportunities for ordinary people to make a success for themselves if they're prepared to work hard, to be innovative and creative, must be there. And I have been hearing this discussion for 25, 30 years. I don't want you, when you are standing where I am, to be telling another generation of Barbadians that this is your mission. I don't want you to do it. Because at the end of the day, it makes a difference, ultimately, to our security and our choices. Life is about choices. And if you don't have the freedom to make a choice financially or psychologically, you're going to be exploited in the same way that slaves were exploited under a system of slavery. And it is that sensitization that I want to bring to you. You know, in order for that to happen, there has to be a culture of transparency and fairness. You have to open up and let the system breathe. You have to open up and create opportunities. And it's not about taking away from who have. Who have need to move to the next level and go outside and get more. But don't try to consolidate only in Barbados in a way that prevents others who can't compete outside from getting a piece of the action in Barbados. So it's not about taking away from who have, but it is about opening up the systems and allowing people the chance, the opportunity. I can't guarantee that you will do it, but I will guarantee that you should have the opportunity. Whether you do it or not is as much an internal aspect of your makeup, your discipline, your willingness to take risks, and all of the other things that determine success. But what must not happen is that you are prevented from even having that opportunity because you don't know the right people, because you don't have access to the right opportunities. And that is what Barbados Labour Party, and certainly my leadership of the Labour Party in terms of building a new Barbados, must stand for. Rooting people culturally and psychologically to love who they are, to be gentler, kinder people, more tolerant, and more considerate. But at the same time recognizing that it takes cash to care and cash to have choices. And therefore financially rooting you so you do not live at the mercy of others in respect of the options that have to. It is my submission that the Democratic Labour Party has not been faithful to the dreams that it wanted to ask you to dream last election, to the promises that it wanted to portray to you. And the danger of that is that especially young people are likely to turn off on everybody, not just those who made the promise. But we cannot let it happen, because the day you stop dreaming, The day you dare not dream is the day you've effectively given up the right to live and live well. And we have, therefore, in ones and twos and threes, in tens and twenties and hundreds, in thousands if necessary, reach and touch that spark in people to let them know I can be somebody. And I live in a country that's going to give me a chance. Hasn't been perfect, but we're working to give ordinary Barbadians a chance to own the things that matter, that can sustain themselves and their families. I want to see the end of the day when a Barbadian feels they have to go and beg a minister for a house. Because you take away the dignity from people when they have to do that. I want to see the end of the day when they have to beg a minister for a job. You should be able to access a job without having to go and beg a minister or an MP. And I say to you that it can happen, but it will only happen through a process of education, through a process of changing the way we have done things in the past and setting new goals, and at the very personal level, changing how we relate to one another. It's easy for me to come and buy a vote. The ones who got the vote bought last election, where they are now? What money are they getting now? Election's done. If it lasts a month after, you're lucky. Easy come, easy go. And I'm saying to you that it must mean more than that. But we're not going to do it by just talking down to people. You need to go into the community. You need to work with people in small groups. You need to talk to your friends. Let them appreciate that these are real issues. You need to talk to young women who can understand that there are other options in life rather than trying to get things by way of who you are married to or who you're growing up with or who your child's father is. You need to talk to young men so that they understand that they too can feel as though they have the right to build families in this country without having to be demeaned by going to have to beg another man for the right to have a house lot or a house or a job. That dignity is important in shaping you. But if we only talk from a platform, some may be inspired and some may not be. And more often than not, changing behavior is about changing habits. Changing habits is about doing something every day over and over and over. Cardio or teacher. When you tell a child something once, why do you give them exercises? Why do you test them? Because it is in the process of doing it over and over and over and over that you begin to perfect that change in knowledge or change in application or change in methodology. Now, what to tell you? I entered politics 20 years ago. I came in to a discipline, very conscious of the fact that most people felt that it was not an honorable profession. That most politicians were liars, most politicians make false promises. But I had a fire in my belly because I knew we could do things differently. Many of you ask me, well, why you don't read a speech? Because I learned from early on that when you pick up a speech and read as a government minister, that somebody said that some PS write it for you, and therefore you're not believing in it, you don't commit it. I felt that I had to go the extra mile to be able to build trust with people. I worked in the government for 14 years and never asked a public servant who to vote for. Not interested. I represented a constituency both as MP since 1994, but substantively on the ground for 5 years before that as a caretaker. And as a moving candidate in 1991, I have never asked a person coming for assistance who they voted for. Never once. I ask you to vote for me at the appropriate time. And I don't even ask you what your answer is, because that is for you and your God and your conscience. And it has worked. You know why it has worked? Because you have to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. I have never used the word promise because that was a negative word. And when you say, I promise you this or I promise you that, people will say, but you promised. I tell people I'm going to try my best. And if I can't succeed for you, I pick up the phone and call you back and say, you know that thing you wanted? You can't get it done, you know. And even though they're disappointed that you can't get it done, they are grateful that you were considerate enough to pick up the phone and call them back. Or you may tell them the way in which you want that done, we can't do it, but I can do this instead of it for you. So why am I telling you these things? I have gone on record already as telling you that whatever time I serve in government, I don't believe should be more than 2 terms. It means that people like you are going to be occupying the corridors of government sooner rather than later. In Sanjay's case, I hope as soon as possible. And the rest of you, sooner rather than later. And when I came into the Labour Party, I had the benefit of what I call mentorship. It wasn't a formal process, so anybody who knew Bruce John or Henry Ford, but in particular, Bree would know that Bree is not going to sit down and say, well, can I talk to you and I want to discuss it with you? You were in a meeting, I would make a point, we would go, Mottley, what nonsense is talking? In his own inimitable style, and then proceed to tell you, they can't do that. Yes, you can do it physically and possibly, but if you do it, you're going to end up with X, Y, Z. And you learn that way. You learn that there was a Labour Party way. You learned that you couldn't go and make false promises to people that you couldn't deliver. You learned that the Dems went and promised people 15,000 tax-free in 86, and that it triggered the country into an economic recession. You learned those things early on. The recurring current account deficit that we spoke about in the 80s came after that $15,000 promise because we couldn't afford it. You learned that there were ways to doing things. You don't go and tell lies deliberately on people. And yes, it is cool to lie and drink and socialize because that's how you build bonds. But at the end of the day, we were not a social club. We were a political organization forged out of the tribulations and suffering of ordinary people in this country. And while the majority of them were black, it did not give us the right now to discriminate against white people or old people or young people or women or men. Because a country that was born out of the bowels of discriminatory behavior could not now all of a sudden want to discriminate against you because you wear hijab or you because you got lost. Because where will it stop? And unfortunately, those signs are emerging in Barbados.